Down the Road Show is a creative venture of Murdock Worldwide Entertainment.
You're listening to the Down the Road Show with JC and Casey.
That mama.
Hello? Ted, did you write that you didn't believe that Chris Benoit didn't sustain his brain injuries from all the headbutts or diving headbutts that he did? And if so, could you elaborate on that?
Well, I don't think anybody's ever going to know definitively, but there has been a lot of speculation as to that the constant pounding and the one move that Chris did all the time was that dive off the top rope, and he basically hit his own head. And they talked a lot about the fact that all those, and they're talking even more now about concussions in football and headshots, and I know the NFL is starting to really come down on head-to-head shots and serious fines. But the bottom line for me, anyway, with Chris and with most of us, I came out here and I went on Larry King, along with John Cena and a couple other people. And everybody that ever had an axe to grind with Vince McMahon came out of the woodwork and said the WWE needs to do this and they need to do that. And basically I said this, at what point do we start holding people responsible for the choices they make? With Chris, he's the last guy anybody thought would do that. If you knew him, if you would have asked me, name the top 5 guys of really good character in the company, he'd have been one of those 5 guys. He was a guy who went out of his way to help young guys, who was just a good guy, a hard-working guy, never complained. I just feel like, I think that because he and Nancy had a special needs child, and as those children get older, they demand more attention, and they're living a lifestyle in wrestling that demands them to be separated a great deal. A lot of people think that caused a lot of turmoil, and what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? And I personally think that because Nancy was, she wasn't a wallflower. She wasn't the type of person, if Chris started screaming, would just cower down. She'd just get right back in his face. And I think that he probably snapped. And I'm not making excuses for him. There's a thing they call temporary insanity, where it's like something happens and you just go nuts, and the next thing you know, it's like, what did I do? Because it took 24 hours from the time when they examined the bodies. 24 hours passed between the time that Nancy died and the child died, and then another 24 hours between that and Chris taking his own life. I think Chris looked at that and said, my life is over, my career is over, my child's going to grow up to know that I killed his mother. And as sick as it is, I think he probably looked at taking his child's life as a mercy killing. And then he took his own life. It took him another 24 hours to get the guts to commit suicide. But nobody will ever know for sure. But in terms of the WWE and what it's doing now, I'll give you one example. My son, right after WrestleMania last year, got a concussion. And so for 4 weeks, he couldn't wrestle on television or otherwise. That's a mandatory rule now. And it wasn't a severe concussion, but nonetheless he had a concussion, so no, 4 weeks. The WWE has what they call their wellness policy. They have hired an independent company, one of the best in the country, that drug tests everybody. They said, here's the roster. Here's all the talent, SmackDown, Raw, all of them. You test them when you want to, wherever you want to. You just send us the results. There are no, because I hear this stuff all the time. Well, that guy, there's no way he could. Yes, and a lot of those guys have, compared to how big they were before, a lot of those guys did shrink. But you can do things today with supplements that you get from GNC if you know what you're doing, and be just as big. And I even asked my boys, I said, do you ever see those documentaries they do on some of the prison systems in this country? And you see all those guys that are incarcerated out in the prison yard, and they look like they should be on the cover of Muscle and Fitness. Yep. I said, they're not getting steroids in the pen. They're eating good. And so there are ways of doing it. But anyway, the bottom line is they have a 3-strike rule. First offense is a 30-day suspension without pay. Second offense is 60 days. Third offense, you're fired. No exceptions. If you are taking a recreational drug or alcohol and you require or need rehab, the company will pay to put you through rehab. As a matter of fact, Vince sends out a letter that's personally signed by him annually to everybody that's ever been employed by him as a wrestler. And that letter basically says, if you are dealing with some type of substance abuse and you need help, we will help you. And of course, I don't know about the NFL or any other sports organizations that do that, and then perhaps they do, and if they do, they should. But at that point, the WWE has done all they can do. I mean, the WWE is in the business of sports entertainment. The NFL is in the business of football. The NHL is in hockey. I mean, NBA, it's basketball. They're not in the business of babysitting. And what irritates me is every time something like this happens, the media or whoever, all the good, some do-gooders out there want to find a reason to blame the WWE or whoever it is. And again, the same thing I said to Larry King. When did we stop holding people responsible for the choices they make? When I got into professional wrestling in 1975, I knew what it was about. I grew up in the business. I knew that it was a very hard life. I knew that it was a lot of miles, and a lot of times it wasn't going to be great money, that I was going to have to deal with less than honorable promoters. I knew what the lay of the land was before I decided to get in. And so when I got in, I said, okay, I'm willing to take it as it is. So why then, at the end of a career, does a guy, all of a sudden, he thinks that the wrestling business owes him something, or Vince owes him something? I would say the same thing to him. You knew. I mean, the old timers told me from day one, save your money, kid. Save your money. It's not how much you make, it's how much you save. I don't want to get off on that soapbox, but again, we live in this country now, and it's the age of entitlement. And I talk to kids in schools all the time, and I said, you're called the entitlement generation because you think you're entitled to everything. I tell my boys, I said, I'm your father, and I said, my job to raise you and prepare you to live life on your own. So if I just give you everything, I said, you're never gonna, if I give you everything you want, then you're never gonna respect anything. And it's like easy come, easy go. But if I make you go out there and work your butt off, for a little bit here and a little bit there, I said, the story I tell them all the time is I remember the first time I mentioned an allowance to my dad, who was also a wrestler. And he was, Dibiase's Italian, so he grew up in a very strong family, and family's everything, but also an incredible work ethic. And he said, if you want money, he says you earn it. And he made me a deal. He said, you work all summer, and you make as much as you can, and I'll match it. And at the end of the summer, then we'll get you that bike you want. And so I worked as a golf course, and I carried a guy's golf bag at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd be out there. 18 holes of golf takes maybe 4 or 5 hours. And this is 1966, and I'd make $3. And so $3 a day, $3 a day, and I'd go put that in that cigar box. And at the end of the summer, I can't remember how much I'd made, But my dad did what he said he would do. He mashed it, and I went out and I got a new bicycle. The first 2 things I bought for that bicycle was a padlock and a chain and chrome polish. And I parked that bike just like you'd park a new car. Why? Because I worked my butt off for it. You know, I didn't have it handed to me on a silver platter. How I got off on this side, I have no idea, but I did.
What was my question? I forgot.
I checked it.
Right? I mean, and do you think wrestlers should unionize, or is that just not going to happen?
Well, I mean, if you wrestle or you play football or if you play basketball, irregardless of what sport you're in, you are an independent contractor. Now, you may be part of a union, and I won't go. I can go off on that too. I mean, it's kind of like, unions are. It's kind of like you're screwed if you do and you're screwed if you don't. Unions initially were formulated and they came into being to help protect the little guy from big business who was taking advantage of you. But it seems like in this country now it's gotten to where the unions are so strong they're starting to dictate policy to the owners, and that's not right either. What it all comes down to is power and greed, any way you look at it. So I don't know that I'm not a big fan of unions either. It's like in the WWE, Vince runs a real tight ship, and it's one of the most successful wrestling organizations. It is the most successful wrestling organization in history. Now you compare that to WCW, and all these wrestlers went down to WCW, and I was one of them back in. But I wasn't wrestling anymore. And a lot of these guys got this clause put in their contract, creative control, meaning if you ask me to do something that I think might be harmful to my career or my image, I don't have to do it. Mm-hmm. Well, then you have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And it actually, well, you saw the difference. WCW after that was just, because nobody wanted to, it's like, I'm not going to get beat. That made me look bad. Anyway, I hope that answered your question. What's up?
I grew up off of you guys, so that's cool. I was born in '82, so. My question is, I notice nowadays, like to me, you guys like legends. Like when I look at wrestlers now, I'm like, man, these dudes ain't creative. Like, like back in the day, everybody had like a personality or like a little swag to them. Nowadays people like just trying to duplicate, and it's not original. Like Jimmy Fly, Super Snuka, Ultimate Warrior. Everybody's like different. But my question was, nowadays they tend to reuse you guys. Do you guys still get paid like royalties when they come out with these like new video games and stuff? Do they pay homage to you guys?
Oh yeah.
Okay. No, I was just checking because they jump a lot of people from back in the day.
And that's one thing that I will say for Vince, because there's a lot of stories that nobody ever hears, and I won't say any names that wouldn't embarrass anybody, but there have been different guys that have fallen on hard times, older guys in the business, and I know stories about Vince paying off doctor bills, paying for somebody to get new knees, paying off somebody's house. One of the greatest examples I can give you that I think everybody would, you may not know, but when Eddie Guerrero died, Vince did everything he could initially to help Eddie's family, and then gave Vicky Guerrero an opportunity to become part of the company. And man, she took the ball and ran with it, and she's doing a phenomenal job. As a matter of fact, Vicky Guerrero and Michael Cole have more heat in the WWE than any of the wrestlers. And I don't think that's right, but that's another story.
Yeah. And Vince paid for, who passed away, was Bam Bam Bigelow. Paid for the whole funeral.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, but yeah, I'll be honest with you. Of course, the business, it's like it's old NFL, new NFL. You look at all the guys that paved the way for the modern day NFL, and I think that, and I don't follow it real close, but I think that some of the argument that's going on now between the owners and the players is, the players want to make sure that the older guys are taken care of. and I think that's a good thing. And I don't know some of the other issues, but I know that I'm making more, and it's like I never know. It's like we get a quarterly royalty check, and it's kind of like surprise me. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, and other times when I want it and I need it to be, oh my God, it's like, oh God, So it's good and bad. But I've actually made more in royalties now when I'm a legend, and I'm actually like, if you get the video game, you got to go through all these other things before you can even get to me. And yeah, I'm making more now than I did when I was a featured star. So when I look at that and go, that's what I'm making. Gosh, one of those guys that are the featured stars, so what are they making? So.
What's Cena making?
But yeah, I mean, there's the company and Vince personally does a lot of things that people never hear about. And he's definitely not. I mean, he's a driven guy. There's no doubt about that. He's all business, but he's not the ogre that he presents himself. Actually, here's reality. When Vince called me and said, I've got this idea, Ted. I've got an idea for a character, and I think, that you can pull this off. The character that he gave me, the $1 Million Man, was Vince McMahon's personal idea. Yep. And I was told later by Pat Patterson, who was Vince's right-hand guy. He said, Ted, here's what you need to understand. He said, you're Vince's alter ego. He said, if Vince were going to become a character in his own company, this is the character he would be. And that's who he is now. Only he's not the $1 Million Man, he's the $1 billion man.
$1 billion man.
This question actually goes to both of you. One of the hottest topics out there in the wrestling world is the Montreal Screwjob. I saw a video recently online. Kevin Nash was really pushing that he feels personally that it was a work, like it was more staged than real. I just want to get both your opinions on your personal opinion, as well as do you think it was real or it was staged just for ratings or anything like that?
I believe Vince McMahon is the boss of the company. Okay, and the boss of the company calls all the shots. Am I correct? So he paid Brett, and he pays Shawn Michaels. Okay, he's the boss. He can make any changes whenever you want to make a change. He owns that company. If you don't want to deal with the change, leave. Okay, so everyone knows what was happening. I mean, it just happened. It just happened in Montreal. It happened in Canada. And Brett, being a Canadian, he wanted to say, "Go ahead, beat me in Madison Square Garden in the United States." Beat him in Canada. He's a Canadian. It can hurt pretty bad, But it's business, Just don't take it personal. It's just business. It happens every day. Pro football, pro basketball, hockey, right? You got to live with it.
Yeah, well, going on the idea that it was real, I would say this. I would agree with Vince. Brett screwed himself. And here's why. Because Brett, just like me, grew up in this business, and wrestling it's sports entertainment. It's not real. And so, the reason that people that are really serious wrestling fans grow to love us is they grow to respect our talent. They grow to respect our ability to go out there and entertain them and to draw you in and make you hate us or love us. And so they know that going in. So what difference does it make whether you drop the fall in Montreal, Canada, or Madison Square Garden, because people all over the world are going to see it on pay-per-view anyway? Why does it matter? So to me, that's kind of an ego thing. Vince, at the time that this was going on, had just lost, Hogan, and me, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and his ladies champion had just lit the WWF World Championship belt on fire and dropped it in a trash can on television.
Right.
And so Vince was a guy that was gun shy, going, what's going to happen? I've got to protect my company. Vince's fear was that even though Brett said, I'll drop the belt, left them together a little longer. And then when they tried to make him an extension of me, big mistake. Let him be himself. And then they gave him the girl. You don't need the girl. And I said, look, if you're going to have a girl on your arm, and I said, you need to treat her like Randy treated Elizabeth. He did it one time, and he got scolded for it because now we're PG again. So, you know, you're now. I don't care who you are. You're a heel, and right now they're so sensitive about the PG rating that the heels. I mean, like I said, Michael Cole and Vicky Guerrero have more heat than anybody on either roster, and it shouldn't be that way, in my opinion. But I think that things this year, from what I've been told, and I won't say any more about it, from what I've been told, I know they've moved him to SmackDown, and I think things are going to get dramatically better. So.
One last quick question.
Virgil, what made you become a wrestler? What made you get into it?
Vince gave me a call to come to Stamford, Connecticut. I came to Stamford. I never met Ted Dibiase. I heard of him, but I never met him. And he told me what we're going to do, and a great character like this, a great person like this. I mean, it was a great experience, you know, and it worked out just right.
And I tell you, you know, we've known each other since whenever we met in that office, and have been good friends ever since. And I mean, in all seriousness, you know, we tease each other a lot, but we've never had a fight.
Right.
We have never had an argument about anything. Well,
That's
not an
professional.
argument. I mean, you tried to tell me that we should go to that one town, and you bet me $200. You guys will love this. We're in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we're going to go to, what was the town? Evansville. Well, one of the referees was Jerry Valiant. He's from Indianapolis. He said, Ted, be sure you don't leave too early tomorrow, because even though it's Indiana, there's an hour time change. Right. It's an hour earlier there. And if you go too early, you're going to be there way too early. Nice. So I told Virgil, I said, we don't have to leave until. He says, oh, no, man. He says, that's Indiana. I said, you know, but Jerry just told me. And he says, oh, man. He says, it's Indiana. That's not right. I said, he lives here. That's not right. He said, I'll bet you, man. I'll bet you $200. I said, Virg, I don't want to take your money. He said, I said, if you put your hand in mine, I'm going to make you do it. And he said, and he started laughing. Well, how are we going to find out? I said, call the airport and see what time a flight leaves from Indianapolis, what time it gets to Evansville. And he said, unless it can get there in 2 minutes, I owe you $200. So then I went out shopping because I had extra time the next day. Walked in this leather store. They had all these coats on sale.
Nice jacket.
I bought this nice leather jacket, and so we go and we're loading up the car. He says, man, I really like that jacket. I said, I'm glad you do. You bought it. Anyway.
Thank you very much,
thank you very
gentlemen.
much.
That's all the time we have today. Ted Dibiase and Virgil, a round of applause. They will be at their booths all weekend signing autographs. Make sure you stop by, talk to them, ask them some more questions. And don't forget to stop by our booth. My name's Casey Murdock. We're the Down the Road Show podcast. We're in the podcast section. That's right. OG's Pizza and Brewing Company in Anaheim, California is just moments away from Disneyland and the Anaheim Convention Center. Their friendly staff is serving up fun for the whole family in a sports-oriented atmosphere with great food and delicious beers. Join them on your next trip and enjoy different happy hour specials 7 days a week.